I am sorry to say that we have finally arrived at the cleanup phase. RIP creative process. No, I'm kidding. Um, so, okay, so it's just about splitting a few parts because so far our whole mesh is one big piece. And if we're gonna start cleaning up, then it's a good idea. It's pretty useful to have all of our pieces be separate. Also, when you start to subdivide and get into really big subdivision levels and a lot of polygons, then ZBrush works best with separate subtools. So one subtool with 100 million polygons is going to be a lot slower than 10 subtools with only 10 million polygons each. But you got to use subdivisions though. Subdivisions, it's what really makes ZBrush fast. Because if you just use a really high poly Dynamesh, and sometimes you might want to do that. I mean, depends on what you need. But using subdivisions is actually very responsive in ZBrush because whenever you turn around the model, if your mesh is too high poly, then it will revert to a lower subdivision until you stop rotating the camera. So it just keeps things pretty snappy. So definitely use subdivisions if you can. And you see, I could have retopologized this piece. I mean, I could have taken it into Maya, but I chose not to because sometimes you try to come up with this very interesting technique of like retopologizing and then bringing it back and then using, I think it's called panel lines or something. But you forget about what ZBrush is actually really good at. And ZBrush is good at doing stuff like these, just working on high poly counts. Because you can zero mesh it to something really low. But then ZBrush stops being as useful. So I just decided to keep it a relatively high poly count and then just use the H polish brush, because why not? Who's gonna stop me, you know? So now I'm just gonna do the same thing with this piece. We're just gonna polygroup it. I'm gonna split it into its own piece. If I can stop refining the edge, because it doesn't matter that much. And I'm pretty sure I zero mesh it. I don't? Okay, I don't even zero mesh. Oh, we don't have to do that yet. Okay, so all I do is mask the border. Oh, close holes. Don't forget to close holes. And then I mask that new created geometry and pull it down to give it thickness. And then that's when I zero mesh. Just to sort of get rid of all that nasty topology that was created with Sculptris Pro. But I'm not really I don't really care about edge loops or topology flow. I mean, I've tried that before and you can do it, but that's not ZBrush's strength. It gets more frustrating. You feel like you're doing things right, but sometimes you just gotta use the manual tools. So you need a sharp edge, just polish it. Use pinch brush. But if this was a mesh for, I don't know, for film or games, then yeah, I might have gone a different way. For games, not really. I don't know if you've seen Horizon Zero Dawn. They have some pretty cool creatures, the mechanical animals. And they look pretty awesome, don't they? But if you take a closer look at them, they're not super clean meshes. I mean, you can tell they were made very quickly in ZBrush, and they weren't completely cleaned up. They're a little wobbly. And the issue they had for doing that? None. None at all. Nobody cares. Why? Because they look cool. Who cares if it's not the perfectly flat mesh? No one cares. So that's one of the things I realized when I was doing this. I could have made it sub Ds, but is anyone gonna care? And a lot of the things that I do are guided by that philosophy. One is do I care? And the other is, does anyone else care? And if the answer is no, then just forget about it. Do things your own way. Especially if you're working on a piece that nobody's ever going to see. You know, looking back at this piece, I should have made them two separate pieces. The back, where the sort of battery pack is held, and the ear cup. I should have made them two polygroups, but I decided to have it on one for some reason. Oh no, I remember why. Because I thought I was going to pull out the helmet. It's hard to describe. Describe with a B, not with a V. Oh, and I just put in this little cylinder. It gave it some bevel with ZModeler to sort of replace the sculpt I had in there. Just to start getting things a little bit cleaned up. So I polish everything out. And I forgot to mention this, I think, but before I started cleaning everything up, I think I made a duplicate. I merged everything and made a duplicate of it, just so if I need to see what details I had before, I can reference those. And I think what I'm talking about is my bottom subtool. So I made a copy of what I had, just in case I forget some of the details that I made before, because I'm like polishing everything out right now. And that's something you're gonna have to do if you want to get it really, really clean in ZBrush. And another thing is that when you subdivide in ZBrush, it actually doesn't keep the edges in place. It sort of like shrinks them. So you can either mask them or apply a crease just to the border edges. I love how Maya handles subds because you don't have to worry about that. The edges always stay in place. So there's no guesswork involved. But I guess ZBrush doesn't work that way. So I keep ZRemeshing it and using polish and okay, here's my reference, the duplicate mesh I saved, because I want to sort of remake that detail now a lot cleaner. But I forgot what it looked like, but that's what the reference is for. And if you're wondering how I pasted those like images there, if you press Shift S, it takes a sort of screen capture of your subtool and leaves it on the canvas. To clean it out, you can just press Control N and that will clean out the whole canvas of any snapshots you've taken. So in this piece, this back piece, I didn't want to do things as manually. You know, like I've been saying, I wanted to come up with a slightly more complex technique. So I used polygroups to create that shape. And then just, I mean, whenever you're using polygroups, it's very easy to smooth out the shapes. And then I applied a default, what's it even called? Panel loops, I think. Default panel loops, default settings. I'm trying to fix some of the polygroups here because they're giving me some issues. So I just ended up deleting them because I didn't know how to fix them fast enough. But doing things this way actually ended up being better than just sculpting it in really cleanly with like a damp standard. And I thought I'd fix those polygroups down there, but I guess... Oh, actually I did. That's just the panel loops trying to do something weird. So I'm just tweaking the bevel profile. And I don't know if you noticed there was a little gap there before and there's not anymore. So that's just because I moved the bevel profile up a little bit. So these two panels are now intersecting each other. So there's no more gap in between them. Minor tweaks, striving for perfection. I'd say imperfection is perfection though. Nah, it's too deep. Forget about that. Go for perfection. Aim to impress. And unfortunately, this panel loops added this edge all the way around, and I didn't really need it to go all the way around, but whatever. Does anyone care? Nope. What am I doing here? I actually don't know what I'm doing. I'm sorry. Polygrouping. I'm trying to create polygroups for some reason. I think I want to give it... I don't know. I don't know what I did there. That seemed like a waste of time to me. I wish I could slap past me. Who knows what I'm doing there? I think I just want to delete all of that. Seems like a weird way of going about it. Oh, okay, so I delete the back and I'm redoing my panels to sort of try to give it a bunch of thickness, but it's not really working out the way I wanted it to. Because every time you use panel loops, it has this polish setting. But if you turn off the polish, then it just creates ugly geometry in a different way. So it's like, They're unattached. Why are they unattached? Yeah, I just completely messed up here messing around with panel loops. I think I forgot to click a button that says ignore groups or something like that. So if I have polygroups and I click panel loops, it's gonna create even more separate panels. And that just messed up the whole thing. But I mean, I'm pretty sure I fixed it. It seems fixed. Yeah, it's fine. It's all fine. So what I'm doing now is just trying to get these two big panels I created at the back, you know, the battery pack and the area surrounding it. I'm just trying to give them different heights. Just to make it look more interesting from the side, but that's it. And then just pushing that piece in. I have a very noisy chair. I'm sorry about that. It's very cheap. It was very cheap. But I mean, it was nice, so why not? So right here, I'm just debating how I want to split this part. I have no idea. I have no idea what I want to do there and how I want to split it up. But I think I just end up splitting the whole area with the teeth. Oh yeah, okay. So we're gonna remake the teeth anyway. So I just decide to clean up that area and split it off. The interior of the mouth ends up being its own polygroup. The same with the bottom, you know, where the head goes in. Ooh, this little piece that we're so fond of, we just clean it out because we're gonna remake it. So like I said, the cleanup process is longer than coming up with the idea. But I mean, it depends on how clean you're making it. I mean, if you're trying to make it super clean like I did for the most part, then yeah, it's gonna take a while. Especially if you stay to try to do everything in ZBrush. Closing holes, because having closed mesh is usually more useful. Just because you don't have to worry about gaps between all of my different panels or components. You don't have to worry about the gaps showing that there's nothing inside. Or that you haven't worked on the inside, I guess I should say. Where did I put this? Polish, polish, polish. So I ZRemeshed this to a lower poly count, I guess. Because the lower you are, the easier it is to polish. But if it's too low, then you can't add any detail. And I kind of want to do both. I want to clean it up and add some sharp edges. So I try to find out like a good resolution for what I want to do. And now I'm just remaking those sharp lines. I'm using what's it called? It's called Pinch Brush. But right now I'm not really committing. I'm doing a very soft pinch with lazy mouse turned on, because I'm gonna make these edges really sharp later. I'm sort of just marking them now. But like I said, I'm not really committing yet. And I'm still tweaking some of these like areas because when I cleaned everything up, I sort of lost what was there. Because when you're sketching, a lot of these little areas aren't completely resolved, and it looks fine in the sketch, but when you actually try to make it into a clean mesh, you realize that you didn't really detail that area out, and you need to like come up with some way of adding something there or making it all fit again. So that's just what I'm doing right now. The ear cup, sort of borrowing the idea of this ear cup from a previous project. I mean, I guess everyone does something like that when it comes to sci-fi helmets. Just looks nice. It's like a safe way of adding a detail. Add this really like large circles on the side. Works every time. Another thing that works every time is like ears. Kawaii. The kawaii effect. Someone called it. But I didn't want to do that. I mean, I did want to do it, but I can't do that every time, so no ears for this one. No pointy ears. This part, I'm just trying to tweak that area out to make it look interesting from the side because it just, I don't know, it just seems to drop straight down. So I'm trying to make that a little bit more curvy. So in the sketch, I realized that like strut or whatever you want to call it drops straight down, and it was just not interesting enough. It didn't follow the rest of the curves or anything. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm tweaking that area and trying to make it a little bit more angled from the side. And then I realized the back is like massive. It's a little too big. I don't know how it got that big, but I guess it did. Oh, we almost made cat ears. Do you see that? How I pulled out these like side little pieces? Whew, dodged a bullet. Sorry. Excuse me. Tweak again. What am I doing now? What's the next step? Oh, polish? Oh, of course, we need to really clean out the area with the teeth so we can create new teeth. Teeth. Teeth doesn't sound menacing enough. Let's call them fangs. No, but fangs are only the really big ones. I don't know. Guess it doesn't matter. Polish. A lot of H polish. So I use H polish to when I need like really hard surfaces, but a lot of my helmet is actually smooth surfaces. Like they have a little bit of curvature. So in that case, I'll just use the smooth brush, or I'll use the smooth brush and then let go of shift, and then it will give me a different kind of smooth. It's more of a relax brush. So H polish for flat areas, and smooth and relax for curved areas that need to be cleaned up. And again, a little bit of pinch there, just to draw that line. I'm sure I could have retopologized all this instead of just cleaning that up with H polish manually, but when you think about it, I mean, retopology does, it gives you really clean result, but it actually takes some time. So in the time that it would have taken me to retopologize all that to get clean results, I mean, it's like about the same time it takes to just polish it out manually. But then again, it depends on exactly what you're doing or what you need. Polish. One of the most useful brushes on ZBrush for hard surface, that is. A little bit of pinch. That's my own pinch brush. So I turned up the modifier and the strength a little bit, and I added a lazy mouse by default. So it's just, I think it's a little more useful for really clean hard surface lines. Never too much H polish. Now I'm just making everything fit properly. Ooh, what's this? Was that the pinch brush? That was not the pinch brush. Can't see because the window's too small. Let me just make this bigger. Okay. Ooh, that looks nice. I just pull it out, give it a little bit of silhouette. Even though, again, I didn't use any perfectly front renders. No orthographic or whatever. Let's talk about something else. Oh, so now I'm starting to use a different brush. It's not the pinch brush. It's a brush that I found. I think I found it. I don't know. It was made by Vitaly Bulgarov. It wasn't made by him. It's actually a pinch brush. But unlike my pinch brush, this one has everything turned up like to the max. I turned up the modifier to like 50%. He turned it up to like 100. Same with the strength and that kind of stuff. So it's actually a pinch brush. It's just like everything is turned up really high. So it gives this real incredibly sharp edge and it pulls the geometry in really hard. So I use it when I need really clean edges, but you don't want to use it to full strength because it like completely pulls all the geometry to it. So just to be clear, it's a pinch brush with everything turned way up. Perfect for clean, sharp edges. And normally I don't recommend you create super sharp edges because they just don't catch the light very well. You know, a little bit of bevels or fillets or whatever you want to call them. It always looks best if they have a little bit of curvature to them. But I didn't really care about that at this point. These front fangs are very important, so I really had to get those right. Was that pinch or was that the Vitaly brush? I named it the Vitaly brush, but I think it was named Pinch 1 or something. And it actually ended up working really well because I can just press B and then V. Because there's no other brushes that start with V, so it just selects it really fast. It was free, so I guess I can share that one with you. But I mean, like I said before, it's just a pinch brush with everything turned way up, so you can just make it on your own. Making sure all my lines are nice and clean and curved. Why am I doing this again? Didn't I already split this? Oh, okay. Yeah, I split this bottom piece, but now I'm only interested in this like a soft seal. So we just give it a little bit of thickness because again, thickness is good. Makes working with the mesh easier, especially around the edges. And I'm just trying to soften it up and just make it a little bit more rounded out. And position it, of course. I mean, if I actually use a human head again here, nothing would fit right. But we don't care about that. We weren't going with functionality, not entirely at least. So I'm just making it look believable. Yeah, believable is enough for me. The illusion of functionality is what I'm going for. But in real life, I don't think this helmet would work at all. For various reasons. fixing the cup. Oh no, I'm looking at my stats for recording this audio. We dropped a frame. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Whatever. Just keep recording. Nice, nice. Pulling everything so it fits properly. I mean, I can at least do that. And I wanted to connect these two things here. I don't remember what I did there. I think I used Dynamesh, just because Dynamesh is very good at merging pieces together. I think Sculptris Pro would have worked just as well, if not better. I mean, getting this piece looking clean and round isn't actually hard. It's mostly about placing it just right. But I'm spending a lot of time here on something that isn't like the main feature of this piece, so just keep that in mind. I'm switching to a different matcap so I can see a little better. Minor tweaks to hide that bevel. We pull this in. Yeah, this like little circular area around the ear is not perfectly flat, but nobody notices. Back to what I said before, does anyone care? Nah. I just went with it. It's mostly hidden anyway by the ear cup. Creating some polygroups based on the angle. I don't know why. Did I subdivide it? Getting the perfect placement, because we're struggling here because again the area underneath it is not perfectly flat. So when I make it fit on one side and the other side it's like raised and it doesn't fit properly. So I do tweak it a little bit more. I mean, I do care. No one else might care, but in this situation I did care a little bit. So I'm spending some time there. Just checking out these pieces, and I realized that it's super large. And we switch to our silhouette mat cap. I don't like perfectly flat mat caps because no matter what you do, your whatever you're making is never gonna be like solid flat colors. So I prefer a little detail to be visible with my silhouettes. I mean, especially if I'm in 3D. If I were in 2D, then yeah, sure, working flat silhouettes. It's pretty useful actually. But in 3D, I mean, I want to see a little bit of detail. You know, next helmet, I'm realizing I'm spending a lot of time tweaking little details that aren't going to be seen. So next one I make, I'll just keep that in mind. And then the cleanup process will go a lot faster. But I mean, I'm sure just by looking at this, you realize that you don't need a lot of time or crazy tools to just clean up a mesh. Just grab the H polish and the smooth brush, and that's it. Don't work too high of a subdivision level. You know, don't work with too many polygons, but don't work with too few either. You want to find this balance. And now, the teeth. The tooth. So we're using some of the, I guess they're called modifiers. I'm using the taper modifier. If you click on one of the transform tools, and then you click on the little gear, you'll get a few, oh, deformers, yes, deformers. So I'm just using the taper deformer. I don't really know how it works because all you have are these cones that don't say anything. So I just pull on every little cone until I get a shape I like. And then I just add this little detail in there to make it a bit more interesting. And this was really dumb of me. Don't do this. So what I do after, I guess I remake this detail. Oh, I think I deleted it, so I'm remaking it. Anyway, after being happy with my tooth, I start placing them manually. And I know I said you shouldn't be afraid of doing things manually, but this is the wrong kind of manual work. What I should have done is made a brush and then just drawn out the teeth on top of that flat area. But instead, I'm placing them all one by one for some reason. I mean, it would have been so much easier to just click make insert brush and then just draw them in. I don't know why I'm placing them right here. No idea. I mean, because if it's an insert brush, you can still place it and still rotate it after the fact and scale it. So there's really no reason for me to duplicate, move, and then duplicate and repeat. Waste of time. So do as I say, not as I do, kind of thing. I guess I just wasn't thinking. I must have been watching a movie while I was doing this. I might have been watching a Star Trek movie. I've been watching the old ones because I liked the series. I figured I was gonna watch the series, and I'm like, yeah, they're a lot of fun for like really old show. So once that was done, I started watching the movies, and the movies aren't very good for the most part. They're pretty terrible. There's like 2 or 3 that are entertaining to watch, but pretty bad. But I digress. Back to moving teeth. Oh, you can make folders now in 2019, which is really convenient because there's a lot of things you can do to the folder or to everything that's inside a folder. If you look at our subtool panel, there's this little gear on the folder, and if you click on that, you can see all the things you can do. So you can merge everything that's in a folder or duplicate it or that kind of stuff. So that's why I put everything in there. And these are the tiny little teeth I had previously sketched out. Just placing those because they're adorable. Can't believe I'm not happy yet because I think I really want to fill in those spaces. Because at this point I had no idea what kind of detail I would have behind the teeth. You know, in that panel that's behind them. I had no idea what I was going to do there, so I'm just trying to fill in that space so it can barely be seen. And here I was actually trying to figure out how to merge, how to mirror duplicate my folder. So I just hit a merge folder or something like that and just use the regular mirror, which you can find. I have it in my UI, but you can find it under deformations mirror, I think. I think so. Don't quote me on that. You spend so much time using your own UI that you forget where things actually are in the default UI. And now these tiny little teeth inside, which we just duplicate from the other ones we've already made. So don't be me, make an insert mesh and draw them out and position them after. I actually don't know what happened here. I did something and my whole mesh like disappeared. I honestly don't know to this day if this is some sort of intended behavior or I just encountered some sort of glitch. Because I can't seem to get back my helmet no matter what I do. You know, solo, everything's not isolated, I click on everything. Nothing seems to work, so I'm pretty sure I just opened a previous file. Thank God, I save my files a lot. Because I'm always worried I'm going to lose progress. So yeah, that cube of death was just trying to ruin me, but it failed. You can't kill the metal. Save your files, kids. Every time I'm adding new elements or I'm making a drastic change, that's when I save. Or when I make a really cool detail that I don't want to have to remake, I'll save. So just ask yourself, if my file crashed right now, would I be unhappy? If the answer is yes, that means you should save. But funnily enough, ZBrush saves the file before it crashes, so you don't have to worry about that too much. Except my issue was that it wasn't a crash, it was just weird behavior that I couldn't figure out. So in my case, I need to fall back on my previous save. Making sure everything is nice and smooth and perfectly blended in. Or maybe not so perfectly. Hey, we just grabbed our sculpt brush. We can't get that to like position correctly, just sculpt it in. Classic me. Yeah, don't forget you're in a sculpting app, even when you're like retopologizing and getting really clean edge loops and everything. Sometimes you just gotta go back to sculpting. We're almost done with this stage, but there's still more to do, more cleanup to do. I mean, not so much cleanup as in adding a lot more of these clean, sharp edges. So I guess I should call it detailing. But we're pretty much done with this video. Just finessing stuff. I wonder... Nah, never mind. Never mind. I thought I should change that because this little piece from the front looks like that haircut where you like make the line right in the middle and your hair looks like an open book.